Well, I'll go ahead, even though people are signing in, just to say, welcome. I'm Philip Thomas. I'm the chairman of the Mendocino Broadband Alliance. But Jeff is the brains. I'm just the figurehead. And he knows 10 times more than I do, and is always a much better person to contact. These meetings have been going on for, I think 10 or 12 years. Is that right, Jeff? Yeah. And
Yeah, 10.
yeah, this may be near the penultimate one, because now that there's actually some dollars and movement, the function of this committee which has been sort of to loudly advocate as much as possible, doesn't need to take that role as much anymore. So we'll see how our role and function move from here. Jeff has created a fairly dense, but I think very manageable agenda, and he will move through it. I don't remember, Jeff, are you going to share that slide packet you shared with me?
I will, yes. I'll
Okay.
share it visually, and I could put it in the chat as well if that's desirable.
That's what I think really would be a great idea. This is a set of slides he created, and I think it's just you don't need to necessarily see it for the meeting, but I think it'd be nice for you to see the overview of it and have it as a reference. And also, when we get to the section about our website, I think Jeff will tell you where we are, and how that also, we're trying to create that as an archive of all the alliances, connections, information, and that sort of thing. So why don't I hand it over to, let's first do introductions. Obviously, I'm Philip Thomas, and you all know Jeff. And why don't you, Tony, why don't you introduce yourself?
Of course. For those of you who I haven't met, Tony Riggs from Mendocino County Information Technology. I'm the IT division manager here, and happy to be part of this discussion today.
Good. Julia?
I'm the Director of Planning and Building Services for Mendocino County.
David?
Hi, I'm Dave Johnson. I'm the Director of IT for Mendocino College.
Right. Jazz?
Good morning. I'm the Mendocino County Area Field Representative for Congressman Huffman. I'm over here on the coast most often, but we also have a office.
Oh, okay. And Patricia is, I think she's with us, and she's still connecting audio, it says, on my computer, and she is from the Mendocino Coast Observer. So Jeff, take it away. Why don't you start out with SB 156?
Okay, so SB 156 is the middle mile and last mile projects by the state of California, and I think that it should be thought of as a 10-year project, because there were 2 years in passing SB 156 and getting the $7 billion for the broadband and middle mile and last mile projects. And there will be subsequent grants coming from the federal government in the form of the BEAD program that will augment the 6 years on the other end. But here is a Gantt chart for SB 156, and despite the fact that Philip was saying that this slide should be shared rather than utilized, for the purpose of discussion, it's easier just to point out what's going on. And as you can see, SB 156 became law in July of 2021, and at the bottom, bunching up at the end of 2022, are a lot of major accomplishments that are coming to fruition in the form of network optimization decisions have been made, and they are receiving responses to the indefeasible right of use contracts. But there's also like 7,000 miles of middle mile that is going out to bid. So as a preface, back in January and May, the CDT, California Department of Technology, developed a 10,000 mile map of middle mile access for backhaul of information from households. So, and it needs to be augmented with the last mile, which is also part of this funding package. But as I say, we now have 7,000 miles of that middle mile out to bid in the state of California. And it should be noted that like 294 of those miles are highway miles in Mendocino County. And so a lot of the pre-construction work is underway. Like Julia's work, largely permitting and CEQA requirements and all of that, which make up, I mean, it make up a lot of what the pre-construction work is, but it also entails the contracts with the large contractors that are willing to take on this project in giant chunks. So moving to the next slide, the network was divided into more complex areas and less complex areas, and apparently in Mendocino County we're in the less complex, and so that we are getting a job order contract for the entirety of Caltrans District 1. And so there are three ways the 7,000 miles are going out to bid: as standalone projects, as joint build or purchase agreements, or as leasing through IRUs. And you can zoom into Mendocino County and see that most of it is job contracts, with some of it being tackled by in Mendocino County by the California Department of Technology. So it seems that the segments between Willits and, say, the Humboldt County border and the job of trenching out to Covelo will be done by Caltrans, whereas a contractor will take on the other route miles in Mendocino County. I'll pause for comments and questions, because that's a lot to digest. Anyone have any thoughts or additional information, or want some clarity on anything that's been said?
Jeff, would you like me to add my update now on coastal permitting?
If you like, there is actually a space on the agenda that we could plug it in, but go ahead.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Well, so I was reached out to, gosh, it was last week or the week prior, from the California Coastal Commission and Caltrans staff, and they are going to be requesting that our County Board of Supervisors consolidate our permitting authority and delegate that authority to the State Coastal Commission, so Caltrans can apply for one coastal development permit for all of the middle mile work within Mendocino County. It makes logical sense. Otherwise, they would need to get two separate permits, one from the county and one from the state, because there are areas where the state retains jurisdiction over permitting authority. So that application hasn't come in yet, but I've been in touch with a representative from Caltrans, and I expect that to come in likely sometime before the end of December, because they would like to have action taken by the board in January.
Thank you. Do you see this as monumental, something unprecedented in your department, or is it not that overwhelming? What is your perspective?
Yeah, it's not too concerning in terms of consolidating authority. We actually do it all the time for Caltrans projects, because if you think about it, bridges typically cross over the retained jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission, because they retain authority over any waterways within the county. And so this is actually something we do pretty commonly. So it's shouldn't be too big of a lift from the department's perspective, but it is really a policy decision by the board whether or not they want to delegate that authority to the State Coastal Commission. And one of the only findings that has to be made is that public participation will not be substantially impaired. And typically that finding is able to be made because the participation options for a Coastal Commission hearing are the same as our local Board of Supervisors, meaning, you know, you can attend in person or virtually as well. So.
Thank you. And this is the Coastal Commission, so it applies to the segment on Highway 1, whereas we additionally have highways 101 and 20 and out to Covelo 162, is it? So there are additional requirements for, this is just an additional layer over some of the other permitting requirements that your office might be facing with regard to the entirety of the middle and last mile projects, if I understand correctly.
Correct. Yeah, and this the coastal permitting process is probably the most onerous of any sort of permitting process over this project. So that's why it's great to hear that they're getting going on that and actually looking at ways to streamline it by working directly with the Coastal Commission, because it will help to streamline it by having one permitting process.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that input. Other questions or comments? And so, as I was saying, as of October 11th of this year, the request for information has gone out with regard to the lease agreements and purchasing agreements and co-location agreements. And on October 14th, they released a job order contract. I believe that they're still out to bid and haven't made a selection with regard to those contractors. But Caltrans updated their slides here showing progress month to month with regard to the pre-construction work, much like Director Krog was discussing. They are overall in the state of California, they have 77% of the 10,000 miles pre-construction work or permitting work in progress, with 17% completed, 19% completed, and some small portion unstarted. However, when you look at Area 1 on the next slide, which is Caltrans Area 1, consisting of the coastal region, North Coast region, Mendocino inclusive, it seems as though only about 10% of the work is completed and only 50% cumulative has been embarked upon. And I don't think that any region is necessarily that much further ahead of us, but it appears as if a lot of work just on the pre-construction remains in front of us. Pause there so you can absorb. But to recap the middle mile, back in May, they published the 10,000 mile map, and this slide deck should have a link to that. The pre-construction work began in August. They have until December of 2024 to award contracts, and all construction must begin no later than January of 2025, with a completion deadline of mid-2026, because they need to expend all of the money before December 31st of 2027. So all of the projects must be completed by January 1st of 2027. Any questions or comments? This does make up a large portion of what is occurring. The middle mile is really, we're all waiting for groundbreaking on the middle mile, and there has in fact been groundbreaking in the initial 18 areas.